it's time to get the truck ready for summer. I actually got it late last year, but it's pretty nice. 2007 Chevy Silverado 1500 Classic. So there's a lot of rust along the bottom rocker panels. There's some rust underneath the cap. We're also going to be replacing this tailgate. It's really bad shape. It's all rusted through right here. This hinge is practically almost gone with how bad that is. So we're going to be replacing that tailgate. Repaint the rims. They're in pretty poor condition. Clearcoat's all peeling off and everything, and we got some corrosion on those rims. So we're going to probably sand these down, maybe plasti dip them or something, just make them look nice. There's one thing that I need to fix. There's a gas leak. So when I go to fill at the gas station, fill it up all the way, no problem. I come back here, I have some gas cans that I keep in rotation around here for emergencies. Went to fill this up the other day with a gas can. Must have overfilled it past the normal filling point that you fill it up at the gas station. Gas started flowing out the bottom. Now I've noticed over here by the passenger side, the rear passenger side, you can get a strong smell of gasoline. So I think there's a hole in the gas fill tube, or there's a hole in the top of the tank, because the only times it leaks is when you go above and beyond what you'd normally fill at a gas station. And I do get the error code for my engine where it says check the gas cap because there's some sort of leak in the fuel system. So yeah, we're going to first start with getting this cap off, and then we'll go on from there. Okay, that's high enough to get the truck out of here. So I'm gonna pull it out and then get this lifted up the rest of the way. So the cool thing I found out is Chevy tailgates are actually pretty easy to take off. Just unhook the two cables, just pop right off. And then on the right hand side you've got an open cup that connects to the nub right here. You just pop it up and pull it out like that. See all that rust right there. That's how bad that was. So I actually have another one right over here. Just picked this one up the other day. $50 off Marketplace. It's got a little bit of surface rust on the outside right here. You'll be able to see it in the sunlight better. But other than that, just a little bit of rust around some of the seams. But it's in much better, more solid condition than my current one. So then pop it on. Might need a little bit of persuading. There we go. Just like that. Then you just connect the cables. like that. There we go. I wonder, do they make it so easy to take off and replace the tailgates because they knew that they were going to rust through so fast? So before we touch anything else on this truck, we need to deal with the gas tank. Now, the gas tank, for the most part, there's nothing major wrong with it. However, I have noticed that it is leaking fuel when you top it off with something like a gas can. When you take it to a gas station and fill it up at the pump, there's no leaking, but if you top it off, go a little bit above that spot where the gas station normally would fill it with, and top it off with a gas can, you will notice some gas leaking out from underneath the truck. Just looking at the gas tank, from what I can see, it appears that there's either a bad seal where the pump is mated to the tank, or there's a leaky line somewhere that's connected. We're going to remove the bed and lift it off and take a look and see what we can find. So you might be saying, why don't you just drop the tank? Well, dropping the tank is a lot more arduous process. There's a lot more bolts, a lot more pieces, a lot more connectors, say for the fuel lines and stuff, that you need to disconnect before you can even drop the tank. And then you got to deal with the gas that's inside the tank, all that type of stuff. I just don't want to deal with it. So the easier way is just lifting the bed. There's about 6 to 8 bolts that hold the bed to the frame. You just need to disconnect the rear brake lights as well as the gas feeding hose, which connects up to the gas cap up here. And that's all you got to do. Now, I've been hitting the bolts with some liquid wrench penetrating oil over the past 3 or 4 days or so at this point. Now, before filming this, I did test a couple of these nuts on here just to see. I used my impact driver to see how they were in there, and I did actually shear off one of the captive nuts that's inside one of the bed rails, which actually attaches to the frame. So that nut in there is just spinning freely. It's attached to the bolt still, so we'll have to cut that one off. But we'll fix that once we got the bed off and get a new nut in there and fix it and everything. Since my driveway is just rocks and dirt and mud, this is one of my most important tools right here. Okay, I'm not gonna pull this camera underneath with me, just because it's pretty self-explanatory once you find where your bolts are. They're right up under the frame, right on the rails that your bed has, so you should know once you crawl under where they are. They're 18mm bolts, so we'll just work on getting these out. Okay, so we got this bolt. This one's the most forward one, closest to the cab. This one's right by the wheel well, right next to the gas tank. So, what have I become? My sweetest friend. Whew, rust in my eyes. I need safety glasses, but I couldn't find them. So we'll just use the safety squints. Look at all that rust falling off of there. One of the many joys of owning a truck in Michigan. That one's not coming. We'll try some of the other ones. Oh, that's a lot of dirt in my eye. That one's not coming either. We'll try these two. We'll just try to get them started with this and then go from there. But we'll just see how this goes. We'll back it out. We'll back it back in a little. Just kind of wiggle it back and forth. Kind of breaking that rust free. If it doesn't want to give, don't push too hard, but just be even with the pressure you're applying. There we go. Might be able to get away with using that impact driver. This motor's really hot, so I don't want to overstress it, but here we go. Starting to spin. That is really hot up there. Go back up. Almost out. Okay. There we go. The first of the day. Now we'll move up to this one right here. We'll switch back to the breaker bar, get it loose, and then hit it again with the driver once we loosen it up enough. Okay, so that one's broken off too. So we've broken off the nuts on 3 of these, 3 out of 6, so half of them. So yeah. Okay, so we're gonna actually cut this bolt in half. I think I got enough clearance in between the frame and the bed to actually get a reciprocating saw in there. So we're gonna jack up the bed a bit, get the maximum amount of clearance that we can, and then get cutting. There we go. There's that. There we go. Okay, so I just cut through the one on this side. Camera was off, but went pretty much the same as the other one. So, okay, so we have 5 of the 6 bolts removed one way or another. 2 of them we had to cut. The other 3 we successfully pulled off, so that's good. But we got 1 left. This one's in a little tougher spot. It's back here. It's in this position right here. You probably can't see that. It's in this position right here. Back in here, behind the tire. Right there, that's good enough. There we go. That's all there is to it. Okay, so now that we got the bed off, we can take a look at this fuel tank. And there's our culprit right there. This whole fuel pump assembly top cover's corroded through, rusted, falling apart. So, yeah, you can see there's fuel coming right out of there. So this is not the safest thing to have on a truck. So it's a good thing we're replacing this. So. Now that we got this cleaned up, for the most part, I'm just going to work on disconnecting these terminals. I've already got the battery disconnected, so don't have to worry about any sparks or anything. There we go. Got this little gasket, don't want to lose that. Tuck that back in there. Okay, get this disconnected. Gotta pry this up and over the neck. It's pretty much non-existent on this at this point with how much rust and corrosion there is, but we're trying to save this plastic part because if we break it, we need to replace it on this hose. So, well, it's kind of coming, but it's coming with a whole part of the fuel pump too. whole nozzle's breaking off. Man, this thing is in rough shape. Yikes. Oh yeah, we'll have to pry that out of there. So I got the clip off of this evap line. You can see that the broken off connector is in there. It's not coming out. Already tried it with pliers. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna try drilling it out. Grab this with some pliers. There we go. Now that might have actually just pulled something from in there. Hold on. Okay, so it looks like we might have actually ripped off part of that. Yeah, I'll have to check, but if this is an inside liner part, which I'm assuming it is, then we'll probably have to just straight line it with some hose, probably on this one and this one. Probably cut these connectors off. Get some 1/2 inch hose on this one, and then some, I think 3/8 inch hose on this one. Okay, so this is what we need to get off. You might not be able to see it, but there are 4 tabs inside that opening that we need to depress. Now you're supposed to buy a quick disconnect tool, but I figured with how rusty this is, I mean, I'm not too worried about messing this up or this. Well, I would like to save this because I don't want to have to replace that part of the fuel line. But we're going to try to disconnect this with some screwdrivers, wiggling around, trying to mess around with it. We'll see how that goes. Okay, so this has been soaking with some liquid wrench for a while now. I did end up going out and buying this tool. This is the quick disconnect tool that slots into here, so you can remove it. So we're going to give that a try. First going to try to get this to twist so we can make sure that it's broken free of this, because I want to make sure that we are actually able to disconnect this without actually breaking off anything in there, because that'd just be a real big pain to have to replace this fitting right here if we get something stuck in it. So okay, so it goes that way a bit. You can kind of see this, it wants to break almost. It's really flimsy. Okay, I think we got broken free enough to try using this quick disconnect tool. 3/8 inch end of it on there. Force it in. Okay, so we got this loosened quite a bit. I'm just gonna, this tool's not working because the tabs are too messed up, so I'm just gonna try to use this bottle opener on my Leatherman, kind of depress the tabs, get them out of the way of the collar on the line. I'm gonna tear this off, see if that gives us a better angle. Close it off so we don't get anything in there. There we go. Finally. You see that clip in there that holds the tube? I ordered some new ones, so those should be coming in. Just slot a new one in there, pull that one out, and then we should be able to hook up our new fuel pump. Currently waiting on a new fuel pump to come in the mail, so in the meantime, I'm gonna grind away a lot of this rust, take it off, and probably repaint this, get it somewhat decent looking, and then we'll get the fuel pump installed. So. Okay, we got that all hosed down. We're just gonna let it dry and then get to painting it. Okay, now that we've given the frame time to dry, we're gonna be hitting it with this rust reformer from Rust-Oleum. It's black. It'll cover up all this rust real nice. It's supposed to actually turn rust into a paintable surface, so if you want afterwards, you could hit this with just some flat matte black paint or whatever you wanted, essentially. So we're just going to cover this whole frame with this stuff and then move on from there. Okay, we got it all painted, and I gotta say it's looking pretty good. I'm quite pleased with how it turned out. Looks pretty slick. Okay, so now we just gotta get the fuel pump out of there, clean out the tank a little, replace it, and then get that bed back on. We've got the replacement retaining clip for the fuel sending line right here. We're just gonna pop it directly into there. See how it's supposed to look? Like that. Now we tried to remove the fuel pump with a hammer and a screwdriver, and all that did was chew up the notches. So I broke down, went out, bought this. It's a $20 tool. He attaches to a breaker bar. Slots directly over in these slots right here. We should be able to get it off. It's just that it's so rusted. It wasn't budging at all when I was hitting it with that hammer and the screwdriver, so we'll use this. $20, not bad. Get some leverage. It's the only piece of tubing I had on hand that I could find that fits, so we'll see if this does the trick. There we go. Had me worried for a second, thought the breaker bar might snap, but worked out. So even if it did break, I mean, this is like a $15 breaker bar, so Harbor Freight, baby. There we go, there's that ring. Okay, before we pull this, I'm just gonna wipe down around here, get as much debris and flaky crap off of here as I can so it doesn't fall into the tank. That should be clean enough. Now we just pull this thing out of here. Stuck in there pretty good, but she's coming. Hope my tetanus shot's up to date. There we go. Okay, so it looks like the seal around it's pretty clean, so we want to pull this up as carefully as possible without dropping anything in. See, there's some rust sitting on the top right there, so there's probably some rust in the tank itself. We'll do a quick visual inspection and see if that's the case once we have this out. Okay, you can see that rust sitting at the bottom of the tank. Other than that, the tank itself looks really clean, so we're just going to drain the rest of this fuel and then wipe down the inside of the tank, hit it with the shop vac, clean off around this, and just make sure we get as much dirt and garbage out of there that we can. Okay, we got 2 siphon lines going in right now. We'll check back in once all the fuel's gone. Okay, we got all the fuel drained out of here. You can see all that rust at the bottom. I'm gonna stick the shop vac in there. It looks like it's only accumulated around this opening here. So we're gonna get the shop vac down there, vacuum it up. Just be careful, because I mean, you got electricity, you got some gasoline vapors, that type of stuff, but hey, who doesn't like to live a little dangerously? Okay, now that we got most of the rust out of here, we're just going to give it a quick rinse down with some water just to flush out any remaining residue that might be sitting around the tank. Where the fuel pump sits, there's a dip in the tank, so that's actually where the majority of the remaining fluid collects. So we should be able to just shop vac it all out of here once we rinse around the edges of the tank itself with some water, and then we'll let it dry afterwards. Just make sure you get around all the edges. I'll hit it with the shop vac again. Now just do a quick visual inspection, make sure we got any and all flakes of rust that were in here. It looks like we got it all. See how clean the gas tank is? We're still just letting it dry. See, you got like little drops like that along the wall. But yeah, it's a lot cleaner. There's no rust in here anymore, no flakes or anything. Got the shop vac all the way up towards the front and the back, so we got everything covered. Just rinse it out. If you got a lot of stuff in the bottom, just keep rinsing it out and keep shop vacuuming it up, and you'll eventually get it all out. Like I said, it pools right around this area, so you can get a good spot to suck up everything and get it removed from the tank. So now we're gonna let this sit for about half hour to an hour out in the sun. Let it just evaporate any leftover water that might be in here still. Okay, so the fuel tank's dry now. We got the fuel pump right here. This is a Delphi fuel pump. Got it off Amazon. Specific part number for this one, I believe, is this FG0340. That's the part for this specific truck. So this fuel pump comes with this O-ring right here. This slides right up here, right on top of that mounting ring right there. We gotta first grease it up with some petroleum jelly. You'll want to use 100% petroleum jelly to lube this up. That way, if it gets in the gas tank, it'll just get burned up with the fuel because it'll dissolve. And there's no extra additives or anything like that in it. And this will help it move when you actually crank down the retaining ring, keep it from binding up or anything like that. So we got this greased. We'll set it right on top of here. This comes with the fuel level sensor. You can tell, very scientific, very high-tech device. Just locks into this spot right here. There we go. We're gonna slide this in, just like that. Just drop it in. Then you're gonna push it down, or to depress it down onto the gas tank. Should fit exactly like that. Now we've got this new ring right here. This just slots right over like this. Just make sure everything's lined up. There we go. So now we're going to attach this fuel feed line right here. There we go. That's how easy it is with this fitting. Just slides right over. Now for this big evap hose right here, we're going to be using this 5/8 inch hose. So we'll cut this to length. We need about that much right there. Now for the smaller evap hose, we're going to be using some 5/16 inch hose right here. So cut that too. We got these hose clamps. This one for the bigger one. I don't know what size these are, but just get hose clamps that fit 5/8 and 5/16 inch hose. Okay, we got both our hoses set up with 2 hose clamps on each of them. We'll install this small one first. Slides right over. And tighten this. Now you could go through all the trouble to replace these lines if you really wanted to, but that would most likely require you to also actually drop the tank. You probably couldn't get at all the fittings if you just lift the bed, because you need to get at the clips underneath the cab that hold down this hose. You could replace this one, but I mean, hey, it's like 80 bucks to replace this hose. Why do that when you can spend 5 bucks on just some hose and some clamps? Okay, make sure that one's tight, because this hose diameter's a little smaller than this fitting right here. So you just want to make sure that that's good and tight. Make sure you got a good seal on, or else you'll probably still get that engine error code for having some sort of leak in your fuel system. Now we just need to reconnect these. These just pop right in like that. Make sure all these are in good. Everything's on there solid. Good to go. Now we'll put some gas in the fuel tank and make sure she fires up and that nothing's leaking up here. There you have it. No leaks. It's looking good. No check engine light on now. It's just telling me that I got low fuel. So yeah, that's how you replace a fuel pump. Not much to it. It's raining, so I decided to bring the truck into the garage today to work on. And since we got the bed off, I figured what better time to replace both the rear shocks as well as the rear differential oil. I believe that these shocks are the ones that came with the truck. Same thing with the differential oil. I have no reason to believe that that's ever been changed at this point. We're at 170,000 miles, so these things really should have been replaced a while ago. So that's what we're going to do today. We've got some fresh brand new oil to put in the differential. We're also going to swap the front differential oil, but that might be later down the road, since I just want to get this done today while it's raining outside and we have the bed off. But we'll also be replacing the front shocks along with that front differential oil. So we'll take care of the rear today. If we have enough time, we might get to the front, but if not, we'll just take care of that next day. So okay, so first things first, we want to put a tub down here to catch any old gear oil that's going to fall out of here. We're going to first loosen these bottom bolts right here. We're going to leave this one at the top to hold the cover in place while we drain everything. Loosen up just a little, just enough to get the cover to separate from the differential. Okay, we got it loosened. We're going to pry that cover off the rest of the way. It's like popping off a turtle shell. Just get a good hold of it so it doesn't fall into the pan once you release it. Okay, and there's the differential. Looks like this hasn't been changed in a long time. Shavings are fine. I mean, it's bound to happen, but yeah, you can tell this stuff hasn't been changed in a really long time just by the amount of sludge and everything that's accumulated around this magnet. So we're going to get this replaced with a new cover. We're going to clean off that surface where the gasket will made up. Looks like it's a bit dirty, but we'll wipe it down. Any spots that got rust or anything, or any other type of fouling material, we'll make sure to scrape off. And then we'll get this new differential cover on. Okay, when we remove the differential cover, we did get a little bit of rust that came off the top of here, so we're gonna just wipe that off real quick. Just make sure you use a clean part of the towel every time you wipe it, so you're not putting stuff back on. Now when you do have the cover off, just do a quick visual inspection of all the splines and the gears. Make sure there's no big gouges or chunks cracking off or anything like that. Just do a quick visual inspection. You don't have to go too in depth, but just make sure everything looks the way you would expect it to look. Now before we get to scraping off anything around here, we're going to cover up the exposed differential with some foil paper. Now we'll take a plastic scraper like this one. You don't want to use anything metal because you need this surface to be as free of marring or scratches or anything like that as possible, so that you can get a good seal between the cover and the actual differential case. Okay, now that we got the differential cover installed, we're just going to torque up the bolts. Recommended foot poundage is around 30 to 35, so we'll just tighten them up to that. Okay, we're now going to fill it up with this 75W90 full synthetic gear oil. Okay, so this cover I bought actually uses a giant hex wrench to open, which I don't have at the moment, so we're just going to use the front differential fill plug. There we go. Okay, we've got this pump attachment right here. We're just going to pump it in here until it starts flowing out of the fill plug. Now this does take a bit less than 3 quarts, so you'll need about 3 of these bottles. There we go, it's full. So now that we got the rear differential taken care of, we're going to work on replacing these rear shocks. So first we're just going to remove this nut on this bolt. We're not going to actually remove the bolt itself. We're going to leave that in until we've removed the lower bolt first. But we're just going to take this nut off right now. See if this will pull it out. There we go. Pop this out quick. There we go. Now we can remove this upper bolt. There you go. That shock, definitely in rough shape. Right there. This is the brand new Bilstein 5100 we're installing in the back. I'm going to install it to boot up, but I guess supposedly it's not supposed to really matter, but I think it'll look a lot better. And plus the labels are going this way, so keep this retaining strap wrapped around it until you're ready to fully get it in on the bottom too. So going to lift this frame right here so we can get the clearance we need to install this. There we go. We got that one installed. We'll just attach the nuts. There we go. Just do that with the other side. You'll be good to go with your new shocks. Can't forget this before we move to the next one. We got the new rear shocks on, the new rear differential cover with fresh gear oil installed, and it's looking really good. Wouldn't even know that it's a 2007 truck that's lived its whole life in Michigan at this point. Okay, so now we're going to replace the front differential fluid as well as the shocks, along with the transfer case oil. We're going to jack the truck up so we can take this wheel off and gain access to the shock behind it. And we'll do the exact same on the other side. I'm just going to show you on this one so that you know how to do it. Okay, got a hubcap off. We'll get these loosened up while it's on the ground so that it's not spinning once we jack it up. So. Now this truck has the Z71 package on it, which comes with metal skid plates that are underneath. So we're going to have to remove the front one so that we can gain access to the front differential, as well as get a good spot to jack the truck up with. Okay, we're now going to jack the truck up by the front differential right here. We'll place a jack stand underneath here just to be safe. Okay, now we can go about removing this tire the rest of the way. This is why you want to get these all properly loosened on the ground. Must have missed this one. Block the tire with this brick. There we go. It's all 6 of them. There we go. Okay, to get the best access to this as possible, we're going to turn the wheel all the way to the right. Okay, before we do anything, remove any shocks or anything like that, we're going to first paint this up like we did the back. So we're going to first wire brush it, then hit it with some rust reformer just to make it look nice. Make sure not to get any paint on the calipers or the brakes or anything, because that's really a surface that you don't want to have any residue or anything like that on. You can put a plastic bag on. Actually, probably should have done that before I did this, but yeah, just try to avoid the whole brake assembly. Okay, now we're going to remove the shock right here. We've got one nut up here that's got to come off that holds the bushings, and then one bolt down here that we'll take out. So first start with the top nut. Pull those bushings off. Now here's the new shock right here. We're going to depress the boot so that we can see the threads right here. So before you can fit this in this area, you gotta depress the rod. So I'm just gonna push it down on the ground, face down, push it straight into the floor, and that should depress it. Just put your weight on it. And you'll just have to slide it up in time before it extends all the way. So. Got that in place. So torque specs for these lower bolts are kind of hard to find online. The best I could find is 37 foot-pounds for a 4-wheel drive. So we'll just tighten them to that. Place this new bushing and washer back up here. And slip the nut over. Like that. You just want to tighten these down until the bushing is as wide as the washer, like it is right here. Okay, so this is the front differential right here. This is the drain plug, and then up there is the fill plug. So we're going to first remove the fill plug, make sure that we can refill it, and then remove the drain plug right here and drain it all. This is a 15mm socket for the fill plug. Okay, this is a 13mm socket. Ooh, that's some nasty looking oil right there. See, this plug is magnetized. It's got some shavings in there. So it's a good thing that we're replacing this now instead of just leaving it to fester like that, because if we left those types of things, let those things go unfixed, could be a big problem down the road. Okay, so for this we're using ADW90 conventional gear oil. This is what is recommended in the manual by GM. It's different from the rear differential oil, which is all synthetic, 75W90 I believe. This is a little bit cheaper. This does not go in the rear differential though. You do not want to put this in the rear differential. The rear differential requires synthetic oil. So we're going to just quickly flush out a little bit of this with some of this clean oil. Probably should have done this with the rear when we did it, but I mean, hindsight's 20/20, right? So we're just going to do a couple pumps in here just to flush out the last bit of stuff that's on the bottom, and then we're going to put the plug back in. We're not going to use a lot of it. We're just going to put it in enough till we see it start to clear up. Put the plug back in. Now the torque spec for these are 24 foot-pounds for both the fill plug and the drain plug. So. Okay, it's starting to leak, so we can pull this out. Okay, we're at the transfer case. This is located around the mid part of the truck. This is the drain plug right here, and this is the fill plug. Once again, we're gonna make sure we can remove the fill plug first before we start draining anything. This is an 18mm socket right here. So what we're gonna be using to refill this is this AC Delco Auto Track 2. Just kind of do a quick little flush of any of the stuff left on the bottom. Now these are supposed to be torqued to 15 foot-pounds. And we'll pump the rest of this fluid in here. This takes a little less than 3 quarts, so it's full now, so we can pull that out. There we go. That's it. Got all the fluids replaced in the rear, the front differential, and the transfer case. So today we're going to work on the bed. We got 3 bolts that are still stuck in here. We got these round captured nuts that broke off when I was trying to remove these bolts, so we had to cut them. So what we need to do is re-weld these captured nuts back onto the frame. And then once we have that done, we're going to weld nuts on top of these bolts that were cut off and try to back them out that way by cranking them out with breaker bar. So we've got this piece of copper tubing right here. It'll fit right over the exposed bolt, so we can make sure we don't actually weld the bolt back to the nut or anything like that. I'm just gonna hold that in place while I put a bead right here and maybe right here, just around the edge of this so that we can get it secured. Okay, now we're gonna try to get this off. Yeah, that came off. That looks pretty good, actually. There we go. There's the first one. Okay, we got this one threaded on. This one had a lot of thread left, so should be pretty easy to do. There we go, there's that second bolt right there. There we go. So we've got all 3 of those bolts out. Now we're just gonna prep this, paint it a little, get it nice looking since there's a bit of rust on here, and get it back on. So. quick tip, if you do have to weld these captured nuts back on, make sure to grind the surface smooth so that there's no bumps or anything that'll keep the bed from mating flat with the frame of the truck. Now for the bolts, these are M12 -1.75. That's the metric bolt size that these nuts are meant for. So I bought some of those. You can find them on Amazon. Dorman sells them. They're supposedly an OEM replacement for these bolts. So that's what I'm using. I'm sure you can probably just go to a hardware store and pick up however many you need. So before we put the bed on, we gotta reattach the spare. Now I didn't show taking it off, but it was a real challenge. This is the mechanism that keeps it locked up underneath the truck. And after a while, these like to get stuck and seized so that they don't release when they're supposed to when you're trying to remove the spare. I wasn't even able to remove it until I actually had the bed off and I could actually get at it from above to release it. But this is how it's supposed to operate. This hook right here is what latches the tire to the frame and keeps it from dropping out, even if, say, this cable somehow snaps or gets cut or anything like that. So what you want is this hook to be recessed because it has a spring. The spring should keep this hook recessed within this body right here when you're trying to lower the spare. But over time, since it's in this position when it's locked, this hook is exposed, clipping onto the edge of the mechanism that holds it to the frame. It likes to get rusted and get seized in this position. So if you do manage to get it off, you want to make sure that you kind of I've just hit it with a hammer a couple times, loosened it up, sprayed it with some liquid wrench to get this loose and free moving like that, because you really want it to move like that, move nice and free, or else you're going to have an issue trying to remove the spare somewhere down the line, and you really don't want to have that happen when you need access to your spare. So once I got this dried off, I'm going to actually just pour some motor oil directly onto it, just make sure it's all lubricated and coated so that it hopefully doesn't get seized up again like it was. So okay, we got the end threaded through the hub on the tire. You just slide it right through. Two clicks should lock it in. There we go. Okay, we just finished torquing down the bed bolts, got this all secured. I think the recommended spec is right around 47 foot-pounds. That's what I found on the internet, so that's what I tightened the bed bolts down to. I threw some blue Loctite on there, make sure they stayed in place. So now all we gotta do is get the trailer hitch back on, and then we can move on to the next part of this project. we got the new fuel pump installed. I went and got some new gas, filled up the tank, but we have an issue here. We got fuel level low, and the sensor, it's not moving. It's not moving the gauge at all or anything like that. So the fuel pump itself works fine. I mean, I've been able to drive it around and everything. But this, the fuel sensor just isn't working. So we're gonna have to pull out the fuel pump and take a look at that sensor and see if there's anything wrong with it. So in order to get to this now, since we got new bolts in, we can just remove all the bolts on this side and leave the other ones on the other side loose. Just a couple threads in to keep the bed on, and we can just lift up the bed. This is a much easier way of doing this. You don't need to take the whole bed off. This is the way I would have done it if the bolts weren't rusted in. We had to cut them all to get it off, but this is the preferred way. It's a lot easier. It takes maybe half an hour to get it like to this point, but it gives you plenty of room in here to access the fuel pump. So I'm going to pull that out right now. We'll take a look at that sensor. Spilling out because we do have a full tank. Just be careful. Gonna get fuel all over the place. Now we did disconnect the battery before doing this, make sure we didn't have any electricity running around here. So we're gonna get this on a bench, take a look at the sensor. So this is the sensor module right here. This measures the level of gas. So if there's something wrong with it, this is the place to start. So we'll disconnect this wire, disconnect that. We got these two contacts right here. Got the two contacts right here. We'll get a voltmeter and check it to see if it's actually working. Okay, we got this voltmeter right here set to ohms. We're just gonna take these, try to move this. This should so it looks like it's working. So the sensor itself looks like it's working. So there might be something wrong with one of the connectors up here at the top or on the truck itself. Okay, so we're testing the two middle connectors in this, which is what connect to the actual sensor right here. It looks like those connectors work. So those work. So that means it's got to be something on the truck. Could be some fouling in the plug. I'll clean those out real quick and then we'll plug this in directly. Okay, so we got this plugged back into the wires that lead up to the front of the truck. We've got the floater in the up position. Now we got the truck turned to the on, and you can see that the fuel gauge is working. I'm going to leave the camera here and go back and move the sensor level arm up and down a bit so you can see how it actually affects the fuel gauge. Yep, now it's in the down position. Yep, so now it's slowly going down all the way to empty. So that tells me there's either something fouling up the plugs. I just blew in them real quick just to make sure they were cleaned. Either that or there may actually be something wrong with this float. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the float that came with this new pump and I'm going to replace it with the old fuel pump float. Just so we know, because we know this one works. I tested this sensor actually beforehand, and this one works too. So I was ready to replace that new sensor with this old one off the old fuel pump just in case we had to, but luckily we don't. So we're gonna get this put back together, put back in the truck, and move on from here. So feels good to have this taken care of. Okay, so now we're gonna address these rocker panels. These are all pretty rusted through. You can see I can just reach my hand right up in here. There's a lot of loose rust and everything, so first what we're gonna do is hammer out all the rust we can get out of here, make sure we clean it all up, hit it with some more rust reformer. Just get this to be a decent surface. on which to place our rocker panel covers. They're plastic covers, got them off eBay for like 60 bucks. No name brand or anything like that. Pretty sure they're from China. I mean, you might say, oh, why don't you just go out and buy some proper rocker panels, cut these out and weld them on. I mean, I could do that, but that'd cost me another 600 bucks that I don't have for something as cosmetic as this. So I'm going with the cheap Band-Aid fix. You can go the expensive route, but for something like this, I'm not going to spend 600 bucks just to fix it. That hole right through the bottom of there. Okay, we got most of the flaking off rust off. We're going to do the other side real quick and then make sure to clean these out. Make sure there's no leftover crumbs or flakes or rust or anything like that sitting in any of these leftover areas, and then we'll get our rocker panels on. So here's the covers I bought. About 60 bucks shipped. There's 4 pieces. 2 for the rear, these 2 right here. And then 2 for the front. These 2 right here go up front. One goes under a door essentially. So we'll get these installed and see how they work. Okay, so before you put these on, you want to peel a little bit of this backing out and just hang it over like this so it pops out. So that once you get this in place, you can just peel the backing all the way off, and that'll expose the adhesive to the body of the cab. So we'll just do that with all these, just expose a little bit. So now we're just gonna slide it right over. Peel that top one first. Get that part on. These ones under here. Looks a little crooked, doesn't it? We'll get the front one on and see how it looks. That thing is not sticking that well with that tape. Okay, that front one went on a bit better than the rear one. We'll have to take a look at that rear one again and just see if we can adjust it a bit. There we go. Now we got this. That needs to be moved. We'll say the one good thing about these is if you mess up, you can just buy more of this 3M tape, I guess, and reapply it if you really screw it up the first time. But I mean, that looks a little bit better right there, doesn't it? And just like that, you got fixed rocker panels, somewhat. You can kind of see, you might be able to see along the bottom it's kind of wavy looking just because of some of the pieces that are still attached of the old rocker panel are still under there. While other spots it's not, so it's going to naturally move up and down along that contour kind of. So I might adjust that at some point, but I mean, this is really just to get rid of that ugly look that we had with the holes and just all the rust and everything. So when you look at it from a glance, it doesn't look like trash. So I think that looks pretty good. It's got a clean line along the bottom, which is really all I wanted from it. So it worked. So we'll do the other side, and that should be that for the rocker panels. That did leave a little bit of a gap right here, but I mean, it doesn't bother me that much. But I mean, like I said, I might adjust these somewhere down the road. Might clean up some of that waviness along the bottom. Standing up here, you wouldn't even notice, so I think it looks pretty good. Okay, so we're going to start working on these rims right here. I've got the hubcap off, just so we don't have to deal with that already. You can tell these rims are in pretty bad shape. These OEM rims for the early 2000 Chevrolet trucks and SUVs run into this a lot, where the clear coat will start flaking off and then stuff gets under there that reacts with the aluminum, and then the whole wheel just corrodes. So we're going to be taking care of this. We're going to first remove the remaining clear coat that's left on these wheels, and then we're going to hit this corrosion with a abrasive disc of some sort, probably attach it to a drill. So what we're going to be using to remove the rest of this clear coat off of here is this Rust-Oleum aircraft remover. Now this stuff is very, very effective at removing paint, and what comes with that is usually when something's very good at removing paint, it's usually pretty bad for the human body. So you want to make sure you got the proper PPE for this stuff. Very few places still sell this, just because there have been so many cases of people misusing it and becoming very ill or actually accidentally killing themselves because they used this improperly, whether it was indoors or in a badly ventilated garage, or if they just weren't wearing PPE at all to begin with. So we've got goggles, we've got a respirator with vapor cartridges on it, and then we've also got these cloth gloves right here. You want to use cloth gloves because if you use latex or vinyl or nitrile gloves, it will eat straight through those. And if you get it on your skin, it's supposedly very uncomfortable. It irritates your skin, gives you a rash, all sorts of stuff like that. So if you are messing around with this stuff, make sure you got the correct PPE, because it is not stuff to screw around with. Now we're going to be applying this with this paintbrush right here directly onto the wheel, just like that. You want to make sure that you don't get it on the rubber, because it will eat into your rubber tires as well. So we're going to try be as careful as possible and just make sure we're getting it on the metal itself and not on the rubber tire, because that will mess up your tires. So I'm going to get my PPE on, and then we can get to applying this to this wheel and getting this clear coat removed. Okay, we'll leave this for about 20 minutes and let it do its thing. Then we'll get to scraping it. Okay, we've scraped off most of the clear coat. Now we're just going to hit it with this abrasive disc on this drill. We still got some corrosion around here, a little bit down here. We're going to clean this up with some 220 grit sandpaper on this oscillating sander right here, and just get it looking nice, and then we'll hit it with some higher grit sandpaper after that. Okay, you can see, because this is wet, that a lot of this dust is getting caught in between, just in the roughness of the sand. So we'll just keep sanding this, get it nice and smooth, and then we'll probably bump it all the way up to 600 grit sandpaper, I think. I mean, these are looking good. I've done all the other wheels at this point the same, and they're honestly looking really nice. Now that we've gotten most of this corrosion off around the outside, I'll have to hand sand inside these. Those are going to be a bit of a pain, but I mean, overall, like a matte silver kind of rim finish on these looks really nice with the rest of the truck. So I think I'm going to keep them like this. I'm going to finish sanding them up, then we're going to just get some clear coat on them, and we should be done with these. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with how they look. I'll show you the other ones real quickly. You can see how good that looks right there. Like, we don't need a super high glossy finish like it was when these came with the truck. Just a flat kind of silver matte finish should do, I'm thinking. Here's the other side. Yeah, that one looks pretty good too. Right there. It's like a frosted finish almost with that 220 grit sandpaper, but like I said, we're going to go all the way up to 600 on these, just to get them smooth looking, and then get them clear coated. So there we go. So we got this dash cam right here that I'm going to be installing. It's a Rexing V1 dash cam. Just got one of these Samsung Pro Endurance SD cards that we're going to be putting in it. Here's the dash cam right here. These are the mounting plates. You just slide up here. It should mount directly into the back of this, like that. Slides and clips in. You can just pop it right off by sliding it. So we're going to get this attached to the windshield. Make sure there's a gap between the rear view mirror and the back of the camera so you can slide it off. There we go. So, a lot of cars come with this neat little cord hider for the rear view mirror. So that's what we're gonna feed this up through. Get it plugged in. Okay, so we got the cord up through here, just feeding it up through this cover right here that the rear view mirror uses. And it goes up into the trim up here, and we're just gonna tuck it along this edge all the way to this pillar, then down through this pillar, right through here, and then around the outside, around the door, and then down underneath, down where the pedals are underneath the steering wheel. Then we're gonna bring it up through the right hand side. Okay, so I found out that the engineers at GM thought it was a good idea to make it so that all these 12-volt outlets are on at all times, even when there's no key in the ignition or anything. So this dash cam powers up whenever you start the car, or at least that's how it's supposed to work, because they're assuming that, oh, you plug it in, the DC outlet's not on until you put the keys in the car. Now with these trucks that doesn't work since these are always on, so I just routed the cord up to the front, and now whenever I get in the truck, just plug that in, and then it'll fire up like that when you're ready to go, and just make sure to unplug it when you park. So it's kind of a dumb decision, in my opinion, to make them always on, but I mean, what you gonna do? You could probably wire something, jury rig something in the fuse box, but I don't want to mess with that, so there's a solution to that. Okay, so we got this all hooked up. It's very straightforward setting it up. The instructions do a good job of explaining how to go about setting all your settings just the way that you want them. I highly recommend getting a dash cam. I've got them in all my other vehicles. Yeah, if you get in an accident, they're very helpful with insurance, so long as it's not your fault. If it is your fault, you might want to just take your camera, hide it, chuck it off into the woods on the side of the road, something like that. So I think I'm going to end this video right about here. It's already more than long enough. I think at this point in the editing process, I'm at about an hour and 20 minutes, give or take a few. You'll know how long this video is once you get to this point. But yeah, I mean, there's still a lot of stuff I want to do on this truck. That's kind of how it goes with vehicles. When you start working on them, you find tons of other things that you want to fix or upgrade or stuff like that. Still got to get this panel painted. This is just primer on top right now. But I mean, hey, doesn't look too bad. Kind of gives it a unique flair of its own. But yeah, I'll get that painted at some point. There's other stuff I want to get taken care of, like replacing leaf springs, replacing brakes, that type of thing. I mean, if I just kept working on that stuff, you'd never get the video, and I'd just still be here working on my truck. So I hope you found this video entertaining. Hope you found it informational. That's the whole point of these videos and this channel, is to kind of give you that entertainment while also giving you helpful information when it comes to working on vehicles or that type of stuff. As you can see, my truck's covered in pollen right now. It's freaking awful out here. That's how it goes in the spring around here with all these trees. But hope you liked the video, and if you did, hope to see you on the next one. So see you later.